All right, in the final video of the 6 steps to 6 figures with Shopify, we are going to look at scaling your store. And specifically in scaling your store, what I'm really talking about here is Facebook ads, okay? So scaling with your Facebook ads to the next level after you have started to identify some of those winners, winning combinations that we talked about in your ads, and you've optimized your funnel now through your testing process, right? Because as you're testing is the best time to optimize, when you're finding ad sets that are working. And before you get to this stage, you really want to have a good amount of data, right? Everybody's in a rush to scale, and I understand scaling is the cool part. This is the cool phase, but you really want to have some good data to back yourself before you start pushing too much money into this, or you can just lose money trying to scale, okay? Briefly, I want to talk about the evolution of a winning product, all right? And this is what we teach in the Ecom Empires coaching program with Justin Wall. This is exactly what we show people how to do. And so I just want to set the context here for scaling, because what I'm really going to be talking about is just scaling your ads to get more purchases, and using retargeting to build, to get more purchases, right? But there's also this to consider when you're thinking about scaling a store. In the beginning, we were teaching people to build a general store, hybrid store, something like that, build a good brand. Everything I've showed you up until this point, right? Create a good brand on the front look of it, and then start testing products to find winners, okay? And by winner, meaning that you're going through the testing phase, and you'll be using some of this that we show you, like this, that I show you here, this CBO phase, scaling part 1, to start getting consistent orders per day, at least 20 orders per day, right? At this point, you're still just testing, okay? Kind of. It's like testing part 2, scaling part 1, right? In a way. Once you start getting consistent orders, you want to look to finding a fulfillment partner. Now, the funny thing about fulfillment partners is everybody, people post in the group, they make this so complicated, like it's such a hard thing to do. You don't need training to find a fulfillment partner. This is so simple, right? You just have to either search in the group in Ecom Empires, just type in fulfillment partner or dropshipping agent or dropshipping supplier, right? And you're going to find posts where there's lots of people who comment and have private fulfillment, okay? Some recommended resources, CJ Dropshipping, Yakify, Weo, right? And there are other ones out there that people use, but finding a fulfillment partner out of China is step 1, because they can help bring that product in-house for quicker fulfillment, better processing, quality checks, even custom packaging. And most of them now offer special line shipping to places like the US and the UK and big European countries, so that you can actually get 7 to 10 day shipping to the US. A lot of times you can get like 5 to 8 day shipping into some of the European countries, because it doesn't have to travel as far. And then you can scale your product much more consistently when you have a fulfillment partner like that, because you're getting quicker shipping times. A lot of times you can even get custom packaging if you want to. You're getting better prices because they're sourcing it for you privately. And you can now move it into a niche store and focus on building a brand around it, okay? Building a brand in red, because that's really the ultimate goal of dropshipping. Is you're really using dropshipping as 1, a cash flow method, and 2, as a method of finding something that works, building your skill set up, and then eventually, based on that thing working, having the cash flow to move it into its own fulfillment and scale it with a niche store, right? And then eventually the next phase would be if you really started to hit something big that was doing well and started to reach the 6 figures per month and such, then you could, and your main countries are like the US, say you're selling into the US a lot. There are actual warehousing partners, right, where you could bring your product in stock, order like a stock of 1,000, right, and bring your product in stock into the US, and even get your shipping time down to like 2 to 4 days. Okay, so that's the general evolution. Now, you don't have to take it all that way. A lot of people like to just sit at the part where they're drop shipping, finding orders, and then finding a fulfillment partner, scaling that product, and then moving on to the next product, right? But building it into a niche store has a lot of advantages. These are things to consider. That's not what I'm going to cover here. Again, that's stuff we do in the coaching program, right? It's a longer process. It requires a lot more training and information. But I just want you to be aware of that so you understand that scaling a store is not just about Facebook ads. I mean, yes, that is like one of the main driving forces of getting more sales so that you can scale. But when you're really talking about scaling a store into something, you're also talking about finding fulfillment partner and a lot of times building a niche store around that winning product that you have. Okay. And also as well, finding upsells, right? Like I talked about the one-click upsell, building out a relevant upsell funnel. Sometimes it could just be offering them the same product to buy one more or two more at a cheaper discount, right? Or it could be offering them a related product, or it could be offering them an upgrade to the product or a warranty to the product, right? There's so many different variations of that based on what it is you're selling and the audience. But that is also part of scaling, because that when you're getting traffic and you have something working, that helps you sell more of that item or something similar to it to start really increasing sales. Now let's get into the Facebook scaling strategy and talk about scaling part 1 with CBO. Okay, this is where you are going to so scaling part 1 with CBO, I already kind of broke down how the CBO works, right? That Facebook, when you're using campaign budget optimization, you're setting the budget here, and then however many ad sets you have, Facebook is going to identify which one is going to be best for your conversion event, in this case purchases, and try to push more people there towards that conversion so you get more total overall conversions. This works really well because of two things. Number one, the freedom and flexibility to turn ad sets on and off in your CBO and still, Facebook to optimize very quickly. Like if your ad set is having a bad day one day, you turn it off and then you start it up again the next day, right? And number two, it creates consistency with Facebook to be able to move the budget around consistently from, days that are performing better for one ad set or better for another. And it really helps create like an automated feel to it. Okay. Now, I'm going to share with you my strategy of scaling with CBO, part 1, okay? Part 1 that can definitely get you to 6 figures for sure, all right? This is something that I've done, and I know other people that are doing this, and it works well. So remember we talked about before, we just as a recap here, let's go back and bring this up, okay? So just as a recap, what we talked about in the testing phase is that you have your campaign, right? Your CBO campaign, and then we're testing like at least 5 ad sets of different audiences, one audience per ad set, okay? And then within that, we're testing for each one of those 2 different ad creatives or more, but like at least 2, okay? And then we're trying to identify those winning combinations. Okay, so when I'm able to identify a winning combination, say this one is a winning combination, right? Then what I'm going to do now is move it into my CBO scaling phase, part 1. All right, and basically this one's not, right? If they were both winning, there's no limit to the amount of winning combinations, okay? So you're testing for anything. Remember, our goal being three or more profitable sales over a 3 to 5 day period, right? And if they are, then that's my first initial of thinking like, okay, maybe this can be. And you're looking into each one. Maybe one of them works, and maybe it doesn't at all. Maybe both of them work. Maybe only one of them works. It's completely, up to whatever meets this criteria of actually getting sales, right? So maybe in this situation, only this one works, right? Maybe in this situation, this one works and this one works, okay? So it's all based on the results and the data you get, okay? So I just created a fantasy example here of, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 winning combinations of ad set to ad that can be taken to scaling part 1, all right? So what I do is I'm going to create a new CBO campaign for that winning combination and duplicate it so that there are 5 matching ad sets. All right. So let's take this one, for example, winning combination. I'm going to move it to its own CBO campaign. Okay. And I'm going to have that original ad set, right? With whatever, it's the winning combination, right? So it comes with its own ad already in there. Because what I'm going to do is I'll just click on duplicate right here at the ad set level. When you're in your ads manager, right, at the ad set level, the one that is working, you can click duplicate and then select duplicate to a new campaign, right? And so you'll duplicate it to a new campaign and you'll make it a CBO campaign. And ideally, you can set the budget wherever you want. You could start it at $50, you could start it at $100. I guess it depends on how strongly you feel, because even though this CBO campaign was $50, so it might seem like we weren't scaling really, this CBO campaign was testing multiple different ones. This is taking something that's working and moving it into its own campaign. So even if you started at $50, you're still taking something that works. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do $100, right? Because I'm hoping to start the scaling phase. So this would be the original, okay? And then I'm trying to explain how this, okay, so you duplicate here, right? And it's going to create a new campaign with just one ad set. So when you start, it'll look like this, all right? And this is the original. And then inside that new campaign, you will duplicate again on that and you will create 4 more copies like this. You can create them all at once because it's all an exact copy, okay? And it'll all be copies of the same thing. Now, as I've said with my earlier minimum ad spend rule, if I'm setting it to 100 and I have 5 ad sets, then I'm taking that $100, right, divided by, it's terrible, divided by 5, which is 20, right, and then divided by 2, which is 10. So I would be setting a minimum, right, I'd be setting a minimum ad spend of $10 for each one of these. Okay. And then this is basically now my, why I say it's like testing part 2, scaling part 1, because I am scaling, I'm moving something that's working into a larger budget. So, and I'm duplicating it. And the reason this really only works well with audiences of over 2 million people is because since I'm duplicating it 5 times in here, I want to make sure I have a large enough audience, because basically what happens, right? What basically happens in this type of situation, and the theory behind why this works, is there's this large total audience, say it's 2 million people, okay? And anytime I set up an ad set, Facebook is just going to randomly pick a spot in that audience to start showing my ad to. It's not going to pick the same place twice. So if I pick 5 different ones, essentially Facebook is starting in 5 different areas, giving me more chances to find winning pockets of that audience, right? Because ideally Facebook is looking for the low-hanging fruit first, and not every pocket that it picks may be a winner. So the more that I choose, then the more chances I have of Facebook identifying. I'm using my same testing principles here. The only difference is now I know from my experience about what my cost per purchase should be, right? Ideally, you have some purchases here, and I'm not turning this off. I'm continuing to let this run. It's like my safety still, okay? Even though it's at a smaller budget, it's like a safety net. I can always try to scale this budget later on the stuff that's working. So I should ideally have some purchases here, and I know, like, what is my average cost per purchase? I'm seeing around $20. So then I know that I can spend on these and watch them, and I have my metrics to look for based on the metrics I've seen here. Okay, and I'm not expecting all of them to work, right? Some of them may not work. Maybe this ad set performs terrible and this one performs terrible. Fine, I'm turning those off, and I will just continue to let Facebook push the budget into the ones that work. Some days you might see and I'm letting this run for, again, 3 to 5 days before I really make a decision on what to do with it further, okay? So I'm letting it run for 3 to 5 days, and then, like any of the ad sets that have gotten purchases at a profitable range, I'm going to keep those running, and any of them that are not getting purchases, at this point I'm definitely looking for purchases, right? So any of them that are not getting purchases, I'm turning them off. And then I'll just continue to let this run, okay? Because the thing to remember too with this is, say these 3 ad sets all have purchases, right? They all have at least 3 purchases now. Facebook will start naturally putting, will start pushing more traffic one way or another usually. But once you're past like a week, say, 7 days more of running it, I will not only look at that time frame of daily, right? So I'll look at it in a daily time frame to say, okay, how many sales is it getting today? And then I'll look at it in a weekly time frame to see how many sales has it got in the last 7 days, right? Because maybe it's doing good overall, but it's having a bad day. And if it's having a really bad day, but it's been good overall, then I will pause it for a day and then turn it on again the next day. All right. So with a CBO, sometimes, ad performance might fluctuate in there. But if it's an ad set that's had good purchases before and it just suddenly hits a cold streak, then I will pause it for the remainder of the 24 hours of that time period. And then I will turn it back on the next day when the Facebook algorithm resets. Okay. So that's what we're doing here. And again, I'm just, I'm looking to turn, at this point, I'm just looking to turn off the ones that don't work and turn on the ones that, let the ones that do work keep running. So that's how it looks like, again, as a example. Okay. I'm just taking that original one from the testing. I'm duplicating it into a new CBO campaign. It'll create this first one. After I publish this, I will then go back to it and duplicate 4 copies of it, so that I'll have 5 total ad sets, each with that winning ad creative, exact copies of each other, all ideally. The minimum size audience that this should work with is this ad set, this original ad set has to have like at least 2 million people in it. Okay. Now, technically, lookalikes should be scaling part 3, really. Scaling part 2 is actually scaling that CBO campaign more. Okay. And there's 2 ways that you can do that, really. And I'm not going to tell you which one to use. I'm just going to tell you both of them that can be used, right? One of them is increasing budget daily, or duplicating to higher budget. Okay, so this is really scaling part 2, because what I'm going to do here is let this run for another 3 to 5 days, and then based on the consistency, what I like to do is duplicate even more. Okay, so what I like to do is duplicate even more. So if this one is working well here, then I'm going to duplicate it to a new CBO campaign. Basically the same process, right? And again, depending on how big the audience size is. If I only had an audience of 2 million, then I would probably just try raising the budget on this, especially because 2 million is not that big of an audience. But if I have an audience of like 9 million, let's just say 5 million plus, and I'm trying to scale aggressively, then I'm going to start duplicating out some of these, okay? To now jumping the budget probably to $500. All right. And again, so I'm duplicating that one into a new one. So I'll have the original, right? And generally I pick the best performing one. I don't know that that matters because it's 5 new ad sets anyway, but superstition kind of thing. I'll pick the one that's performing best, and then I'll duplicate it out and make 5 new copies, okay, of that same one. I'll keep this one running again still, but I'm duplicating this to a higher budget. Same exact process then. The ones that work, and it may not be the same, like it's not going to be the same pattern, right? And it may not even be the same amount. Maybe in this one, 3 of them don't work, but 2 of them do, right? But generally, at least I'm seeing 2 to 3 per CBO work when I do this. And the reason is because I'm testing, number one, quality products over quantity, right? It goes back to the very first step of the research phase. And then number 2, we are actually testing creatives and audiences first, and then only trying to scale what we know has been proven to perform well, okay? So once I start putting stuff into these bigger budgets, I already know that this audience ad creative combination works. So it should continue to work based on at least a few of these winning pockets being found every single time and being able to scale. Right now, will this work forever? No, because eventually we will saturate the audience. But this is just a scaling phase to be able to push out aggressively, right? And to hit the audience quickly. If you want to avoid that overlap eventually, then what you would do is I would look for a sweet spot, right? Well, I always look for a sweet spot no matter what, because I find sometimes that it stops performing well at a certain budget. So with this one, and I like to test both, right? At this point, I'm still testing a lot of different things, right? So like with this one, after I let this run for another 3 to 5 days, then I might try duplicating this to $1,000 a day in a new CBO campaign, okay? Not try, I will. As long as I'm still getting good performance on this one here, then yeah, we're gonna move this to its own and try moving that to $1,000 a day. Same exact principle, okay? But maybe it automatically doesn't start working well at a higher budget. And if that's the case, which I have seen sometimes, okay, I'll get rid of the entire CBO campaign if it's not working at the higher budget. And I kept this going, right? My safety net, I'll backtrack to this, okay? I'll try raising the budget on this one. Okay, I'll jump the budget probably, if performance looks good, I'll jump the budget at least $250 to like $750. Or another thing that I've done before and can work well, actually this is kind of my preferred method if I'm trying to scale aggressively, is I will take this and instead of duplicating to a bigger budget, I will just duplicate it to the same budget that I've kind of identified now as my sweet spot. Right? And so I'll duplicate it to the same budget and turn off the ones that don't work. Same thing. Let the ones that work continue to run in Facebook, optimize pushing that budget in. So this is a way that I found I can scale CBOs laterally instead of vertically if they are not working at higher budgets for me, but I have a big audience. Like say I have an audience of 20 million people, real life example, right? And I'm trying to scale aggressively on a time frame, then I'm going to laterally scale, horizontally scale out a bunch of these CBOs all at $500 because I found that going over that budget for some reason is just not working for me, but I can still spend more per day by duplicating out more CBOs at this budget that's working for me, okay? Turning off the ones that aren't working, turning on the ones that are. So that's my overall scaling strategy with CBOs, okay? And you can see there's some room for flexibility in there, because the scaling laterally is when I'm really trying to push aggressively into an audience, maybe on a time frame, or like to do it quickly. And I've already found my sweet spot. Like I've tried, say, increasing the budget on this to $750, but my performance starts to wreak havoc. Or I tried duplicating it to a higher budget CBO, and my performance just didn't look good where it was before. Okay, that's how I will start to scale laterally using the CBO method. Now, another thing to consider as well, if you are trying to scale vertically on one of your CBO campaigns by pushing the budget each day, is the idea of scaling early in the morning and then looking at the ad sets that are performing, right? So ideally, when I'm going to try to scale vertically is when I have at least 3 ad sets that have been performing well. Okay, because that gives me some room to distribute the budget inside the CBO. And if I have 3 ad sets that are performing well at $500, and I have a few days of data on this, 3 to 5 days, so they're all getting good consistent sales at a good profit margin, at a good cost per purchase, right? And then so say I try to jump it up to $250, okay? So now what I'm looking for is the ones that perform, all right? So if I see that this one, when I jump to $250 starts getting more sales evenly, and I see this one starts getting more sales evenly, but this one starts a big increase in sales, then I'll keep an eye on this one, right? Because I'll look at my overall blended CPA for the CBO. But if it really is showing like these ones are just crushing it, and this one with that increased budget is not, I'll turn this one off, right? I'll pause it, okay, for the rest of the day, and I'll just let Facebook push the budget here, and then the next day I'll turn this one back on because I know that it was getting sales, so maybe it'll pick up and do better the next day, right? And I will also keep that in mind for scaling, right? So I'll let it run maybe a day. I mean, you could push more aggressively if you wanted to, but I'll let it run for like a day. And if I'm seeing consistency still on my blended cost per purchase, then okay, jump up again, another $250. Now we're at $1,000 a day. All right. And I'm monitoring the CBO's ad sets inside to see which ones are performing well and which ones aren't. If they're all performing well at a good blended CPP, there's no reason to turn anything off or pause anything. But if one of them seems to be running away, and I'll pause it, especially if the other ones, right? Like if all of them start running away, then I have an indication that, okay, I need to stop trying to push this ad budget up, and I go back to my lateral scale, right, of just duplicating out more CBOs. But if I'm seeing that some of them are performing really well at the higher budget and getting more sales, I'll just pause the ones that aren't. Okay, so there are a couple different methods intertwined there, but it gives you a direction you can go no matter what to continue scaling. Now, if you have a smaller audience under 2 million people, I would just suggest duplicating out that first one and scaling it gradually, right? There's no reason to try to get aggressive if your audience is under 2 million people, because you will just burn out your audience more. What you should focus on is finding more audience combinations here so that you can create more CBOs. Because remember, this was just for one example, right? This whole tree here was based off of just one winning combination. So ideally, in practice, what would actually be happening here is we would be doing all of this times 4, right? Because I have 4 winning, times, Yeah, no, it would be times 4, right? Because I have 1, 2, 3, 4 examples in this case. So I would have started with the CBO for all of these. So the ones that are small audiences, you're just looking to get that CBO set up and maybe scale the budget gradually based on performance, okay? The ones that might have bigger audiences, then those are the ones that you can really start to try to push aggressively with these lateral scale CBOs. Until you could have multiple ones of these running right at the same time, 5, 6, 7 of them running at the same time, spending a lot per day to push you into those 5-figure days. Okay. Scaling part 3 is creating lookalikes. Now I run my lookalikes with the same strategy, okay? So I'll talk about just creating the lookalikes, but then the lookalikes go into basically the same strategy of using the CBOs, okay? So Facebook recommends for your seed audience, right? Your seed audience is what you're creating your lookalike from. Facebook recommends minimum 1,000 events for a custom audience, but I say that I generally start with 300, okay? Except for video views. Video views I'm going to talk about separately. But for your video views is a seed custom audience that I create lookalikes out of. But I'm not going to talk about that here because here I think you need at least like thousands of views. View content. All right. So at 300 view contents, assuming you're getting purchases, right? Assuming you're getting purchases at 300 events is where I would really start to do it. Even though Facebook is going to say audience size is too small, it'll just say less than 1,000, right? View content, add to cart, initiate checkout, and purchase. You should be creating a custom audience for each of them, and then eventually creating a lookalike from them. Now, if you are running a niche page, then there are even more audiences that might make sense for you. Okay, so when you come in here, you can see that website is where you're going to create all your custom event audiences, right? View content, and it's pretty straightforward. You'll have your pixel, and then you can do it based on you'll have your pixel, and then you can do it either based on specific. So since I don't have any events, it's not working. But you'll get the option to like put in the parameters here of if they viewed content, or if they page view, or if they add to cart, right? So this is where you do all of those custom events. Okay, if you have something that's really niche, then you can do Facebook page. All right, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this unless you are, unless you're actually, in some sort of niche, because otherwise your page could be super general if you're just testing a bunch of different products. But you can do people who engaged with your ad, people who clicked the call to action button, people who sent a message to your page, right? These are all seed audiences that can work as well that I wanted to mention. And then of course video, we'll talk about video later, where you can use video views to create audiences. So those are the main ones that I look at in your seed audience. Okay. And then using that to create a lookalike. All right. Really simple. Creating a lookalike audience is right here. Basically, Facebook will ask you to select what seed audience you want to use, and then you'll set your lookalike parameters. So what I like to do is 1 to 5% starting for each one, okay? And I separate it by the area. If you're just targeting the US, then obviously, or if you're just targeting and selling in one country, it'll be in one country. But if you are doing it in multiple regions around the world, then I'll separate those lookalikes by regions and create like a different region set of lookalikes for each one. So for example, with view content, okay? If I was doing view content just in the US, then it would look like this. View content lookalike 1%, 1 to 2%, 2 to 3%, 3 to 4%, 4 to 5%. And eventually, if these work and I get deeper into the scaling phase, I'll test the other 5% because you can test all the way up to 10%. But in the beginning, I'm just trying to make it manageable, right? And so that's the way I'll go through creating the lookalikes. Now, if I was testing different regions of the world, then I would have a view content lookalike, say, one for the US. And then I'd also make 1% for 1% for Europe, right? So if those are the two areas I'm selling, then I would do that. And 1% for Australia. Okay, so if you're testing worldwide, then it becomes even more lookalikes that you're creating per event because you're doing 1 to 5% per each event, and you're multiplying that by each region that you're testing as well. Okay, and then when I'm creating these, now each event I'm putting into its own campaign budget. Same exact strategy as you see here, except it's not a copy. I'm using that winning ad creative still. Right, and then I'm going to put them in 5 different ad sets and test each one with the winning ad creative. So this is where for lookalikes now you would be creating multiple different CBOs, right? Because for each one of these I'd have view content, right, and then I'd have 5 different audiences, and I would have add to cart. And it's not all going to happen at once because obviously you're going to hit your like 300 view contents much faster than your 300 add to carts, and still much faster than your 300 purchases, right? So each one of these though, I would be creating their own separate CBO campaign at $50 with those 5 ads in there, and testing them the same exact way I normally set up my testing, okay? Now, you might be saying, well, why aren't you split testing your ad creatives? And you can, right? If you have multiple ad creatives, assuming you have one ad creative that's performing really well, I would use that. If you have multiple ad creatives that are working well, then yeah, you would start at the beginning of the testing phase all over again, and you would be testing the different ad creatives for each one and finding the winning combinations again for each one, right? And then once you identify a winning combination and turn the ones off that don't work and just looking for those winning combinations, then that's when I would let this run for a little bit, but then, yeah, I would move it into its own CBO. And these ones, though, I'm not trying to scale aggressively, right? Because this one, once I move it into its own CBO, it's already like only a 2 million audience size probably. So I would just be moving it into its own CBO at, say, $100 a day, and then I'd let it run, right? And I would just turn off the ones that don't work. These become like your backup, kind of really can help you scale, because you don't necessarily need to run all of these at high budgets, because they're all only going to be generally anywhere from like 1 million to 2 million people based on your your region that you're targeting. And so I'm going to go through, and my goal here is to just have a bunch of these set up running at like $100 a day in their own CBO campaign with their own winning audience combination, and have them going, right? Because you have a lot of audiences to test here. So just between these 3 events, you could end up creating like 5 of these or more that are your own $100 a day campaigns running. And of course, you could continue to scale them by raising the budget if you wanted to, based on performance. But I'm saying that you don't even really need to. Right? You don't have to. You could just let them run at $100 a day and let them run their course with those audiences. Okay, that's testing with that. So sorry, I'm stuttering there. That testing strategy is basically scaling part 3 with lookalikes. The rest of these are additional scaling strategies. These 2 last ones I'm going to mention are additional scaling strategies based on just like more placements and more expansion, and not necessarily budget. Okay. So worldwide targeting is one. If you started out just by selling in the US or one major region and your product is working, then obviously selling worldwide is an option, okay? Massive worldwide targeting, excluding, low performing countries, breaking out different campaigns, one country per campaign, or selling by world regions. These are all options. I'm not going to say which one works best because I think it's specific to what you're selling and what your fulfillment situation looks like. But it is something that you should consider. If you have a product that's working and you have fulfillment capabilities to get it to other countries without creating much of a headache for you, then you can definitely consider scaling out into other countries, because there are a lot of countries in the world, not just the top ones, that can perform good numbers, especially if it's a product with large mass appeal, like we talked about in the first video. Best performing countries, generally the ePacket ones, right? That's why ePacket is available there. This list has been updated at this point. You can search the top, there's, I think, 39, 40 ePacket countries now. These are some of the best performing countries I've noticed over the years. Countries generally avoided are COD countries, okay, cash on delivery. If you know how to sell cash on delivery and you have cash on delivery connections in some of these countries like India or in South America and Central America, then there can be a lot of opportunity. But I would not try to scale into these countries just using the general dropship model unless you have really good experience, because most of these countries are COD countries, or they have separate payment type options that they use. Like in Brazil's a great market, but they use boletos, right? And so if you're just trying to run to a Shopify store with general credit cards, you will get some purchases, but it's not going to be. It's really going to start to skew your stuff. Additional scaling by expansion. Okay, just quickly here, because this is kind of straightforward. Obviously, you should be testing new interest. And when you have a converting interest, what's nice is you can put that into audience insights and then find what else is related that might break out new ideas for you. Especially because in audience insights, you can define exactly, right? So say you found that men ages 25 to 45 who like a certain interest are performing best for you. You can put that exact data into audience insights and see what comes up as their top liked pages and top liked, most affinity pages that will start giving you new ideas. Okay, if you're unfamiliar with audience insights, it's in here in your, where is it? Did I just scroll over it? Audience insights, right? Analyze and report. So in here is where you can just a quick look at this, right? Because this is pretty self-explanatory. It's in the Facebook blueprint. You can learn this stuff, right? So if I know that ages, let's say 25 to 45 men who like rugby is performing well for me. This is a small audience size here, but it's just the first thing that popped into my mind. All right, I can come over to page likes and start to see maybe some related things that could be related pages I can test, related interest I can test, related things I can look at to get ideas. Even some of them may seem kind of fringe, like the Beard Club or 9line Apparel, but it could be related, right? And when you're in the scaling phase, you want to test as many different interests as possible, especially if they're broad interests, because if you find new broad interests that do well, then they are highly scalable, right? Placements. I talked about earlier that I like to only test generally in the Facebook feed and the Instagram feed, but this is where you can start scaling and into different placements like right column, auto placements, these kinds of things when you're scaling, if you want to start testing out some new ones, okay? And objective. I don't always do this, but I know others talk about it, and it is a valid idea that you can test other purchase objectives higher up in the funnel, like add to cart, or initiate checkout to see if by testing a new objective, you open up a new stream of sales that Facebook wasn't hitting before. Okay. I've seen, I don't personally test this often. I have found where it has its place, but this is something that I know I've seen others that have done it. So I'm just including it here as an option, when you're looking for expanding into scaling different areas. And then finally, retargeting. Okay. This is not going to be an exhaustive retargeting training because there's a lot of information out there specifically on it. And again, it's something we go over in depth in the coaching. I just want to give you some good insight on retargeting. Again, the types of events you should be retargeting are view content, add to cart, well, if this is separate, if you're collecting email addresses, initiate checkout, add payment info, purchase. Now, not all of these will you be retargeting at first, right? Because some of these are only going to matter if you're getting thousands of visitors a day to retarget separately for initiate checkout and add payment info. Like you've got to be getting massive traffic, in my opinion, to make these more valuable to target separately than just targeting add to cart, right? But these events you can set up where somebody viewed content but didn't add to cart, somebody added to cart but didn't purchase, which would technically cover all three of these, right? Add to cart, initiate checkout, and payment info. And then you can show them ads based on, retargeting audiences, video views, view content, add to cart, initiate checkout, and purchase. Okay? So, in the beginning, when you're just starting, retarget app is a great way to, let me look in the future here. In the beginning, when you're retargeting retarget app is a great simple way to retarget people because it's automated, all right? And until you really start getting to the point where you have a few hundred visitors a day, like 500 or more, I don't know how worth it is to start setting up separate retargeting events and campaigns. But this is generally the way that I would look at it, okay? When you are getting enough traffic, you can separate your two audiences. Video views and view content are people that have viewed the video or clicked on your ad, but haven't added to cart. Okay. So you can retarget them with some sort of, or you can even retarget video views that haven't clicked. Okay. That's another one. Like you could make a custom audience for people who viewed 50% of your video, but then exclude anybody who viewed content. Now you have an audience of people who viewed at least 50%. So they showed some interest, but they didn't click. And you can do an audience of people who viewed content but didn't add to cart. In both of these situations, these are good audiences, but they've showed interest, but they haven't shown buying intent yet because they hadn't clicked the add to cart button. So you don't necessarily want to show them some sort of discount yet. You can retarget them though with some sort of benefit, testimonial, social proof. Could be a video ad, it could be a different image that you have, could be an article that you found or that you created as a blog for your store. And the goal being to just create more goodwill there to bring them back and try to move them into the next phase of wanting to add to cart. Examples here, right? Like retargeting ads that are hitting you with benefits, free 1 to 2 day shipping, 24/7 customer service. Free shipping, award-winning designs, 100% satisfaction guaranteed, right? So they're not hitting you with a discount yet because you haven't necessarily showed the buying intent yet. So it might be too early to hit with a discount, and you might still be able to get the sale without giving a discount. So you're creating a different type of message by targeting just these events specifically. Okay, and again, I would start general with the retarget app if you are new. Let me look it up for you. Okay, so this is the retarget app. You'll see it on the Shopify App Store. It's a very general way. They use dynamic ads to retarget people on your store based on what product they looked at, and you basically create a one ad that they'll use the same ad copy, but they even have a sliding scale to tell you how much it costs per month, right? based on the amount of visitors that you're getting, based on your daily ad spend, right? So like if you're starting out small with $10 a day, $49 a month, right? So, but they start to get expensive when you start to get to the higher, like amount of, and they give you this expected number, but this is ridiculous. So like that's why once you start getting to the point where you're starting to generate, you're spending hundreds of dollars a day on traffic, it makes a lot more sense to do your own retargeting and then use the app, because it just gets too expensive, right? They just get way too greedy, I think. So anyway, that's a great way to start as a really general, $19 a month plan. They have a free trial that can just start, making sure your audience is retargeted until you find something that really sticks and is starting to scale for you. The add to cart event is when they have showed buying intent, right? They've clicked add to cart, but they haven't purchased, okay? This is a custom audience you can create that includes people that added to cart but did not purchase. This is when you definitely want to retarget with a discount, percentage, or free shipping, all right? Example here, the clock is ticking, 40% off clearance and free shipping, use code TikTok. Here, one from Startup Drugs. What do awesome t-shirts and 20% discounts have in common? You, because you're getting both. Use code CARTHACK for 20% off your order, right? So these are examples of hitting an add to cart, retargeting ad with a discount. Could be free shipping, but generally the percentage off is what's really going to move the needle for people. A final part of retargeting that people don't talk about as much is post-purchase retargeting, okay? One thing that's cool to do is retarget with a thank you post using the engagement objective, people that have purchased. Once you've had enough purchases, right? Once you've had like maybe at least 100 purchases, I would say, especially if you're doing a brand, right? This doesn't necessarily apply as much to drop shipping, but when you're trying to build a brand, when you're trying to elevate to the next level, I think retargeting with a thank you post can be great. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could just be a picture, with like a cool thank you picture, or it could be a video. Just something that says, thank you, we appreciate your business, and we wanted to say we hope you're enjoying your experience, or something like that, right? And of course, you can retarget with future offers. So anytime you build a purchase list, again, assuming you're building a quality purchase list and you're delivering a quality experience to people, right? Not always necessarily with the dropshipping stores, especially when you're just getting started in testing. I'm just trying to help future pace for you here and give you what I know about retargeting. You can also use that purchase list anytime you have a new sale or a new item or a flash sale or something, right? So explore the new season of goodies. We offer a wide range of gifts for family and friends. So this is like a new flash sale of things. Another sale. This sale is hot, hot, hot right now. Get 30% off. happysocks.com. Okay. Different types of retargeting, just summing this up. Basically what I just walked you through is there's generic retargeting like the Retarget app. Now, this is an advanced form of generic retargeting because they do use dynamic product display so that whatever product they clicked on it is the product that's showing. But behavioral retargeting and takes it a step further because you're actually breaking down the different actions of behaviors people take on your store, like we just talked about. And sequential retargeting is when you are, I'm not going to go into this. This is a much more advanced concept. Sequential retargeting is when for each action here, like say, sequential retargeting is the idea that for your different actions, say view content, right? You're creating different audiences so that you can show them different ads based on their different stage of the customer journey. So say this one is maybe an ad set of people that viewed your product 2 days. And this could be one, people who viewed your product 5 days. Okay. And this could be one that viewed your product 7 days. And each stage, you're showing them a different ad, a different type of ad, so that they are constantly seeing new content and engaging with your brand in a different way. And you're trying to push them to ultimately the next level and move them along the customer funnel journey, right? So like this one, then same thing. Or you could break it out a little bit further. Maybe you could do 3 days, maybe 7 days, and then maybe 14 days. And it's almost like your abandoned cart sequence, right? You're trying to escalate the offer a little bit each time. So like this could be benefit, testimonial, benefit, right? This could be discount reminder. Just sloppy writing, I know. And then like the best discount, so say it goes from 10% to 20%. Okay. And the reason I'm not covering this is an advanced strategy that I would say is only going to matter for people who are getting, thousands of visitors a day. Because even up until the point of getting like 3,000 visitors, I don't even think you need this. But when you're starting to get a lot of visitors a day, something like this starts to make a lot more sense because you're feeding Facebook more content and you're breaking your audience into pieces and constantly moving them along in this really cool kind of funnel. Now, if you are like high tech or high speed and you understand this already, then the last thing I'll mention is for something like this, you want to optimize for daily unique reach, okay? Because when you're using these custom audiences based on time periods, you don't, like, people will be in this pocket for more than one day. And so you don't want Facebook, say this person logs on to Facebook 10 times and this person logs on 1,000 times. You don't want this person seeing all the ads and getting pissed off. So you would optimize these ad sets for daily unique reach, and the budget would be kind of small on each one of these based on how many visitors you're getting, right? So that's the idea of sequential retargeting, right? It's a sequence that moves people through based on behavior. Behavioral retargeting would be just one ad for each of these, one ad for view content, one for add to cart. And then sequential is when you break out a sequence for each behavior that's moving them along in a funnel. And general is where you start with the retarget app because it's ideal when you don't have a lot of traffic. Okay. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about in this, I didn't actually put it here, but I'm going to refresh this and I want to talk about one more thing, wrapping this up. That is my video views strategy. Okay. This is a scaling strategy because this only works on products that have already kind of started scaling. Right? Like if you have a product that's scaling and is consistently getting sales, then you're going to be running that video for a long time. Okay. And if you are running that video and you're able to rack up 100,000 views or more, then you want to take your custom audience of video views, right? It's not open anymore, but we looked at that where you can create a custom audience based on video views. And Facebook breaks this out into a few different ones. There's 95%, 75%, 50%, 25%. I don't know why that's the only one I chose to draw the percent sign. Then there's 10 seconds and there's 3 seconds, right? Okay, so each one of these can be a very valuable audience. Let me draw my percentage signs in here. It's bothering me. Okay, each one of these can be a very valuable audience actually from the video views because you have, again, this is only if you have a product that's converting and getting sales, right? Because if it is getting sales, eventually you're going to rack up this 100,000 views. And the reason I say 100,000 is because generally the more, right, the more I've tried it with lower views and it's really skewed results, and this can be an expensive testing strategy. So, but by the time you have like 100,000 views, 95%, I mean, you may have like at least 5,000 people who've watched 95% of your video by this point, right? Or 10,000 people or more. And so it's actually a really good seed audience for each one of these. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to take each one of these video view events that Facebook tracks and you are going to use it to create a custom audience. Okay? And then once you do that and you create a custom audience out of it, you could use this in retargeting, like I already talked about. You could retarget people that have viewed more than 50% and didn't perform an action. But right now I want to talk about a strategy for scaling, not retargeting. What you can do once you've taken that and made that custom audience is now create lookalikes out of it, just like we did with our other events. So you would create your 1% lookalike, 1 to 2% lookalike, 2 to 3% lookalike, 3 to 4%, and 4 to 5% lookalike. Right? So now you've been able to, you're creating new audiences, okay? And you can do it for all of these. I would probably start with all of them but 3 seconds, maybe not even 25%, depending. If 10, I would probably choose one or the other, 25% or 10 seconds, whichever one is longer, just to make it manageable, right? I would start with 4 out of 6 of these, the 4 that seem like the most quality. And basically, I would take each one of them, and then I would do the lookalike thing, like I showed you earlier. If I have multiple regions that I'm targeting, then I would do this, and I would do it for the multiple regions, okay? So this automatically here gives you all these new audiences, because if you're picking at least 4 of these, you just now have 4 audiences times 5, 4 events times 5 new audiences each. So you get 20 new audiences to test, right? And then you're doing the same exact type CBO. I'm taking this and turning it into, this would basically become its own CBO, right? For that 50% event. And then I'm looking for the ones that work. Okay, so if this works, then I'm going to open that up into its own CBO and now duplicate it 5 times and then test the same strategy and look to scale the same way, right? So I'm using that CBO scaling, that testing the scaling as my foundation. And then as I scale, I'm branching out into new audiences, new custom events, and finding new lookalikes that I can continue to feed into my CBO scaling strategy while also building out my retargeting, okay? And that is, listen, this right here can for sure get you to 10K a day, okay? Going beyond that, listen, Facebook ads is a very advanced, it can become very advanced subject, and there is a lot out there, and this training, and that's where we go into that stuff with the coaching, right? This training is meant to be 6 figures training, which I wanted to keep very realistic, practical, and even probable if you follow all of this all the way through. So now we have followed it all the way through. This is the end of the last video. Please go apply this stuff and do this stuff, and I think that you will be able to see amazing results, and I'm hoping for you to use this and go out there and crush it with your products, with your store, with Facebook ads, and hit that 6-figure mark and beyond. And then maybe even be ready to join us in our coaching, where we can really push you to the next level of the advanced strategies and getting into the stuff that's like, 20, 30, 40, 50K in a day, that kind of stuff. In a day, not in a month, right? In a day. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you got a ton of value out of this. If you did, and you watched it all the way through, and you are now here, and you got a lot of value out of this, please let me know. Please post it in the group and let other people know. That way I can get that feedback, because I spent a lot of time going through and creating all of this for you, so I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Best of luck to you. Cheers.